I show 6 o'clock, so I'm going to call this special board meeting of EVIT District 401 to order. And
Who do we have?
I think we have 5.
No, you got more than that.
Oh, yes.
Hey,
Who do we have? Because I got a call for vote.
the only person not on is Mr. Johnson.
Okay.
The only one I can see in the boardroom is Wilson and Lane. Mr. Lane, will you lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely.
I pledge allegiance to the
to
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
God.
Indivisible, with liberty and
liberty
justice for all. Wow. That brings up item 3, call to the public. Dr. Wilson, do we have any public there?
No, sir, we do not.
So then there's no call to the public, I assume?
Correct.
no public to call.
Okay. That brings us to item 4, which is an action discussion item, and I'll call on Dr. Wilson at this time.
Okay, so
Mr. President, members of the governing board, item 4 is class fees. And before I walk you through what we provided, I need to make an apology. So when we were all together on Monday and Mrs. Doolin questioned the fees for the books, in my mind, I was getting frustrated because I assumed that all of those were books that the students would take with them. So it was kind of an archive that used them to go into the next step of their career, at which we couldn't pay for because they would take them with them. So when Ms. Doolin objected to the fees for the books, I began getting a little bit frustrated because I didn't believe she was right. Turns out Mrs. Doolin was mostly correct. And so I need to apologize to you, Mrs. Doolin. What we found out is the vast majority of the fees we charge for books, we should not be charging. Somewhere along the way, that amount began getting bled into the student fees. That was quite some time ago. And unfortunately, it was our belief that those were the resources that I just described. And so when you look at the fees for books, it's our recommendation that we eliminate those fees, all for programs, with the exception of programs that need that as a resource moving forward. So for example, in aviation, the gentleman presented to you that there will be information that those students have to buy because they're taking it with them. But outside of programs like that, it's our recommendation that we not only eliminate those this year, but moving forward, we should not be charging for our students those dollars. So that elimination amounts to $143,250. It's also our recommendation that we eliminate for this year the student fee for the Career and Technical Student Organization, or the CTSO fee. That would be a fee that's eliminated for every student because not all programs had books, but every student has the CTSO. So we'll eliminate, it's a recommendation that we eliminate those fees, which is another $79,000. And as a reminder, this year we eliminated the industry certification fee, and we would recommend that we continue that again next year. I think the board made valid points that there are individuals in our community that are hurting, and I think the opportunity for us to look for ways of reducing the cost to them is a good steward of our, not only taxpayer dollars, but it's the right thing to do. And so when you look at the reduction of the workbooks, the CTSO, as well as the continuing the industry certification fee, that amounts to a 55% reduction in our student fees compared to what they were in 2019, 2020. And that's all I have to say about that.
Dr. Wilson, I have a question. What is that ECC $5 fee that's charged?
So that's essentially a student council charge. So it's a support fee, and all of those dollars go into the student council, and the student council then redistributes those dollars back out into the programs.
So that will be continued then.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Wilson,
Yes.
I have two questions. One is when we're on Zoom, if we ask a question in chat, does that get captured on your end, or do we need to be asking those questions out loud?
Tammy just gave me Mr. Fleetham's question, so she'll feed me those as they come, and I'll answer. She'll monitor the chat, and I'll respond to those.
Okay, I wanted
Good.
just to make sure we had that
Right.
point of order, because I don't want us to have private conversation that's not read into the record.
Okay.
The second.
I do, I want to, Ms. Doolin, I need to clarify that. I meant to say the CTSO
SO.
fee, not the
Mhm.
CTE org fee, so I
Right.
apologize.
Okay. Secondly, my question is this, just so I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're recommending. You're recommending the textbook fee goes away forever, but the CTSO fee would only be for this year, only due to the COVID constraints and what's been going on with the pandemic and other issues in our community right now, correct?
Yes, that, and also the industry certification would be for this next year only as well. As we start coming out of the pandemic, I expect that some, if not all of those two fees will cycle back to students, but the textbook fees are going to be removed, recommendation to be removed not only this year, but years moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
I have another question.
Okay.
Or did I cut somebody off?
So Mr. Fleetham has a question about the
Okay.
CTSO.
I'll wait.
I can answer it, but Mr. Lane or Mr. Covington, you both are CTSO experts. Would you like to do it?
This is Mr. Covington, and the CTSOs are a place where students go to show off their skills. It's one of the places that they go if they really want to go and they really want to take a test. And it's really amazing how they do at them and what energy they put into them. It's a very positive aspect of the program. Also, it's required that they go to the CTSOs. And if we're getting a COVID bonus for next year, I think that's nice, just 1 year.
Mr. Fleetham, I believe that you need to unmic. I'm sorry. Mr. Fleetham, we can't hear you.
Muted. Hit your
I'm
space
sorry.
bar.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. So to clarify, the CTSO membership fee is a membership fee for an organization where the students go to show off their skills?
Correct.
What, I mean, in general? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I can speak to that too.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Lane.
There's a lot of different CTSOs. Some of them are geared to different program areas. Membership is mandated by statute for funding, CTE funding. The heartburn I have is they're still maintaining that we join, but they're having almost no activities this year due to COVID. And it's also
Gotcha.
almost entirely run by the Department of Education, which seems like a huge conflict to me. They've taken over those organizations in Arizona at the time that it became statute. So it's kind of like they're holding everybody hostage. The CTSOs cannot accommodate every student. So they're collecting memberships, and they may be able to actually in their areas, maybe at most 25% they could accommodate in activities. And the rest, they're just collecting money. So particularly since there is no opportunity during this year, for all intents and purposes, all their events are canceled for the most part. But we're still required to do that. And I think it's wrong for kids to pay the state something that the state mandates and the state's not delivering. That's my opinion.
The CTSO money does not go to the state organization, it goes to national. It's a national membership.
But the state controls all the activities in Arizona.
They
Well,
have
I
to
think we
control
could,
what's done in Arizona.
I think we could go down a whole rabbit trail there because
Yeah.
we're paying for education that's not being delivered as well in some districts. So I don't think we can control that piece right now.
So one of the questions that was asked of us in Monday is to not only look at the workbook, textbook cost, as I apologize, but also to look for other ways to solve some of those financial issues. And I think that the idea of reducing our student fees by 55% over what it was in 2019, 2020 is a step in the right direction. And we can revisit some of those fees prior to this time next year.
I have one more question, if I may. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Okay.
In looking through this, and something I noticed at our previous meeting, but I wanted to double check. We have under some of these categories, we have fees that are listed as other. And I know that happens from time to time, other fees, but when the other fees are a total of between 30% and 37.5% of all fees, I think that we should really be able to tell what that is rather than other. It's not uncommon in some budgeting practices in government agencies to have other fees that total in excess of 50% of all fees or all costs. I'd really like to get a handle on what those fees are when they're significantly, if it's a $5 fee or a 3% of total, but if it's 37.5% of total fees charged, it'd be nice to know what that was.
Mr. Fleetham, members of the governing board, we certainly can break those out for you. The largest portion of that other fee is for drug testing in our medical program, as well as our CPR training in not only our medical, but our fire science programs.
Okay. And that makes sense that if those were separate line items, that would be great. For instance, in the construction second year, $130 of total fees, $45 is listed as other. And that's too high of an amount in understanding accounting to have that thrown in as other. So that would be great if we could do that.
Okay.
In my humble opinion, so.
I have one more question. Are we using the terms textbook and workbook to mean exactly the same thing? Because in my mind, they're two different things.
Yes, Mr. Watkins, you are correct. And that was part of the problem, is that we were interchanging those terms. And so we have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. President, we have textbooks that are in our classrooms. The workbooks we should also be providing, unless the student is going to take that with them for another, the step 2 of their program. Somewhere along the way, years back, the workbooks that should have been provided by the district were added into the student fees. And so that's where that confusion is. We're actually talking about
I lost
workbooks,
you.
unless it's a true textbook that the student needs for that next part of their career, then we'll list it as a textbook.
Hello?
That's not good.
I think it said my internet connection is unstable.
Everybody's is.
Oh, that's just not me.
No.
And I'm gonna have a drink of Diet Pepsi.
So are there any other questions I can ask? If not, then I'll turn the meeting back to you, Mr. Watkins.
Well, I still have.
Mr.
I'm
Chairman,
Yeah.
I have a question. I have a question for Dr. Wilson. If we adopt this recommendation, is that going to enhance student interest in EVIT? Or not?
I'm sorry.
What will the effect on student interest in EVIT be if we adopt this recommendation?
So I think the initial value in doing that is that if there's a parent that is leery of attending EVIT because of fees, this lessens that leeriness. Although we've always taken the position as an organization that no student will be denied opportunities because of financial issues, whether it's a program that we offer at a reduced rate or whether our foundation does. But I think sometimes parents that are exploring EVIT could potentially get a little bit shy about pursuing the opportunity because of the fees, especially given what we're experiencing in our communities the past 18 months. So I think at the start, I think it gives a greater opportunity for parents to feel comfortable about exploring their child's opportunity at EVIT because the cost is much more reasonable to them. I think for our students, nothing's going to change for them. They're still going to have access to the same opportunities as they did before. The difference is just the fees will be absorbed by the organization versus passed on to the student or the parent.
Thank you.
Dr. Wilson, Jeff Fleetum here. Is there a way we can deliver that message to the parents to let them know? That's some of this stuff is significant when the total, I don't know if it, I know my daughter, who was a single parent and had two young boys doing this stuff, $20, $50, $100 a year was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a way we can message that somehow without going overboard, it would be awesome, I think.
I agree. I think that, I think the idea of looking for ways to offset financial costs, especially in this time, is a story that we should be telling, and we plan to tell, assuming that the governing board accepts the recommendations.
Larry, were you scratching or did you have a question?
This is Covington. I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, this is for Jeffrey. I'm looking over, I looked through all the other fees, and most of them are in construction or culinary or some other things, and they're for their knives and culinary, and construction is for their helmet and their belt and some tools. HVAC is for the tools that they're going to keep. So a lot of this stuff is stuff that they're going to keep for that $45 other.
So, no, and I understand that might be what it is, but it shouldn't be listed as other. It should have, there should be something other than other listing it.
It should be called supplies, really.
Huh?
Supplies. Tools,
Yeah.
supplies.
Whatever we want to call it, but it shouldn't be called other in an accounting matter, especially when it's that much of the total fees. So.
Are there any other questions?
No, I'll make a motion to approve the said request.
Second.
The
And-
said request is, we are going for total
clarify
reduction
my
of
motion.
workbooks and textbooks.
I'll clarify my motion. To remove the textbooks from the fees permanently and a 1-year reduction of fees pertaining to CTSO
And industry certification.
and industry certification.
Yes, that's what I was going to add. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
And Ms. Boggs, will you call for the vote?
Yes, I will. Covington,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lane,
Aye.
Doolin,
Aye.
Boggs is an aye. Watkins,
Aye.
Hart,
Aye.
Hobson,
All right.
Fleetum.
Aye.
Okay,
Motion carried.
carries.
Yes, thank you. That
Thank
brings
you,
us-
everyone.
That brings, yes,
Rhonda, that was a very good idea.
it was.
Okay.
That brings us to 4B, salary increases for instructional staff. Dr. Wilson for discussion.
Mr. President, members of the governing board, if it's okay with you, I'd like to speak in general terms to items B, C, and D. They're separated out purposefully as separate action items. I think that makes sense, but the conversation is similar in all three of them. And so instead of having that conversation 3 times, I'd like to kind of walk you through the information that we're providing and then answer questions specifically that you might have in those individual areas. Does that make sense?
Well, my question is, do they require separate votes or could they be combined?
I would suggest that you do separate votes.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Okay. But the
When we
discussion
were-
is essentially the same.
Yes. When we were together on Monday, there were some questions that were asked that we needed a little bit of time to figure out the answers to. And so we spent the last couple of days trying to dig a bit deeper to provide some of those answers. And so I'm going to go through what we provided, and if there's more that's needed, please let me know. One of the questions that was raised is our salary in comparison to Westmac's. And Westmac is the mirror image of EVIT on the west side, and so we looked at the CTE high school instructor base salary on 10 months, EVIT versus Westmac. EVIT is $40,000. Westmac is $45,455. We looked at CTE high school instructor base salary on 11 month. EVIT is $44,000. Westmac is $50,000. Adult ed instructor full-time, EVIT is $52,432. Westmac is $55,000. Adult ed instructor hourly, EVIT is $25 an hour and Westmac is $29 an hour. So whether it's a high school 10-month, high school 11-month, adult full-time or adult hourly, there is a difference between what EVIT is paying and what Westmac is paying. We were asked also to look at a comparison between EVIT salary on average, Westmac, Arizona, and then in the United States. EVIT's average salary is $56,073. Westmac's average salary is $60,086. The average salary in Arizona is $54,750. And the average salary in the US is $64,800. So EVIT's average salary is better than the average salary in the state of Arizona, but is not as good as Westmac's, nor is it as good as the average salary in the United States. There was also a question, I believe, from Mr. Hobson about the impact salary increases have on retention of staff. And, to make, I don't know that I said this well enough. I think that it's a two-part equation. It's not only attraction, but it's attraction and retention. I mean, those two parts have to go hand in hand. We have to be able to attract the best staff and then retain the best staff. And one of the areas that we have a struggle in terms of attracting the best staff is what I just explained to you, that when an individual might be looking at working at a CTE organization, if they're looking at our website and our base salary is below and our average salary is below, we're in a position that we're not as competitive in terms of the attraction of new employees. The retention is an interesting concept because over the past 2, and I suspect this going into next year, 3 years, EVIT has improved its teacher retention year over year. In fact, I want to say maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago, EVIT had over 20%, I think, reduction in staff every single year, meaning that the teacher, 20% of the staff left every single year. This year that we're currently in, if you remove the individuals that sat out because of COVID concerns, we're in single digit departure, which means we're retaining far more staff now than we have in a long time in the organization. Part of that, I think, is due to the increases that have happened from the governor's office and the governing board over the past couple of years. I think part of that was the righting of some of the financial inequities within the system, the correcting of the salary schedule, the renorming and replacing that the board has done over the past 2 years. But I also think a good portion of that is just the culture in the organization. And so I think the culture in the organization matters when you talk about retention of staff. But there is that window that money and the compensation can bleed into potentially negatively impacting the culture. So my answer to you, Mr. Hobson, is that I think that money matters more in the attraction of staff, but I do think it matters in the retention, because I think at some point in time, variables like what we pay versus what Westmac does bleed into the culture, although I think our retention over the past 3 years is more reflective of the environment that we're working to create. I don't know that
Culture is huge. Culture
is.
is huge.
We also, did that answer your question, Mr. Hobson? I don't know that I did that. That was a word salad. Okay. We also separated out the different employment groups a bit differently this time than what we presented to you on Monday, because I think it got a bit confusing. And so we provided the cost of a 3, 4, 5, 6, and the numbers didn't change, but we grouped them a bit differently, where you have high school instructional staff, adult instructional staff, adult ed instructional staff hourly. Then we have high school and adult ed support staff salary, high school and adult ed support staff hourly, and then administration. So you have kind of three different groupings of employees. You have the instructors, both salary and hourly. You have support staff, both high school and adult, and then you have administration. And then the last piece that we provided you was the percent that the different groups would get of an increase. So we based it on the all employees getting a 6% increase. Certainly that was just because it's easier to do everybody the same. You can pick and choose, differently. But the point of it is that if on a 6% increase, the salary and benefits for the organization, a 6% increase for all employees, the salary and benefits for the organization is $755,000. Out of that, 55.5% will go to high school instructional staff, 1.2% will go to adult ed instructional staff hourly, 4.6% will go to adult ed instructional staff salary. High school and adult support staff salary would get 12.4%. High school and adult ed support hourly would get 18.6%, and administration would get 8.7%. If you go back up to the groupings I just talked to you about above in item 7 above, you have instructors in this scenario getting 60 some percent of the dollars allocated in compensation. You have support staff getting 20 some percent, and you have administration getting 8, 9, 10%. The reason why I included that is because I think it's important that folks understand where the bulk of our money goes, but also I think it's easy sometimes during the course of a journey to forget where you started. And when we started together a number of years ago, 2.5 years ago, the organization had administrative costs that were over 20%. And one of our commitments is to stay as close to 10% administrative cost organizationally as we can. And it was important to me to reflect that in the 6% across the board, we're still giving less than 10% of that compensation to administration. Certainly, if you differentiate percentages, for example, if teachers get 6 and support staff gets 5 and administrators get 4, then that 8.7% is even less, right? Because that means that they're getting a lesser amount of the overall and the instructional percentage will go up. But I thought it was important to show you where and how the distribution is in relationship to the staffing and the groupings of staffing in the organization.
Dr. Wilson,
Yeah.
you mentioned percentages. What percent of overall staff for EVIT is administration versus the teachers versus all of those different segments you broke down? In other words, depending on the number of people, obviously that number would be, much more significant based on the percentages.
Yeah. Yes. So obviously the largest employment sector we have in the organization is high school instructional staff. And so that's going to drive the largest number of percentage in the increase. But that's somewhat purposeful too, because our goal is to have as many instructors as we need in order to bring our class sizes down, especially this year, our class size is down. The governing board approved class size ratios because in years past, the situation was, you put as many kids in there as you possibly can because it's all revenue generating. And so our goal is to say, we want to have manageable class sizes so students can get the educational opportunity that they deserve, which means we're going to have to hire more staff, which naturally means that more money is going to go into the staffing section, and a percentage increase naturally goes more towards that group.
Sure. I was also curious, you mentioned you were comparing EVIT to WestMec, and you had mentioned, I believe it was at our last board meeting, you had mentioned the compensation structure that was outside of just base salary, where it created more of an equalizer, if you will, that EVIT provided maybe some better other options. And I don't know if it's financial contributions. I really don't know what it was.
301. Our 301 compensation, Larry, is, I believe, much better than WestMac's.
And if that is indeed the case, I think that we'd be remiss if we didn't recognize the difference in that plan versus WestMac, as well as a total, to put everything in proportion as far as salary and compensation.
Mr. Johnson, I think that's a fair point. I think, organizationally, we worked to try to create a much more robust 301 plan. And there's, that I think it's debatable whether that's the right direction or not, but that's currently the direction it does go. I think one of the challenges with the 301 plan, and we've worked to minimize the difficulty and the complexity of it, and we're work to do more by the time we come in front of you next year. We're going to involve Mr. Lane to help us kind of navigate some of those hurdles. I guess the challenge with it though is that, not every individual takes advantage of the 301 plan. Now, the opportunity might exist, but if I'm an individual that has other aspects occurring in my life, but I'm still a quality teacher, for me to be dependent upon an external amount to catch up or maybe even go above the competition, I'm not so sure that puts the best light on our ability to attract and retain. But to your point, we do have a better 301 plan, in my opinion, a more rich one than Westmac does.
So I'm going to ask, what is the pay difference? Because I know that at EVIT, you get anywhere from you can get, some of us when I was there, we're getting $8,000 extra through 301.
Yeah, so
significant.
We have worked to change that parameter a bit, because the reason why that occurred is that there was some stipulations that really only allowed certain individuals to kind of dump into those high categories. So we're working to make it a more equitable plan across the board. And so, it can range. There was a period of time, it doesn't exist anymore, but there was a period of time in which you could conceivably make $10,000, $12,000 as an EVIT employee in 301, but that might be one or two people. The bulk are making $4,000 or $5,000. And remember, Westmac has a 301 plan as well. So ours might be richer, but it doesn't mean theirs is void.
Right, but it does even that playing field. I think that's important. I think Larry brings a good, important point that we need to acknowledge.
I think it closes the playing field. I don't know that I would be comfortable saying that it evens it, but I think it closes it.
May I make a comment, please? Mr. Covington? There's a couple different things. I like to appreciate the culture that you brought in there, Mr. Wilson, over the last few years. Thank you. I think that's improved retention a lot with all the administrative staff combined with you. The other thing is Westmac doesn't have the brick and mortar that EVIT has, so they can put a little bit more money into their salaries. It makes a significant difference because we're taking care of a lot of facilities. I think we have more employees. I'm not sure if we have more employees or not. I'm not sure, but they can put a little bit more money in upfront on the salaries than we can, but we sure are trying.
I appreciate that, Mr. Covington. Thank you. And as much as I want to take credit for the changes that you just described, it really isn't me. It's everybody that we brought in, right? I mean, that's what makes the difference. It's not just a single person, it's the total. One thing I would lean into a little bit is I think this governing board can afford a 6% or a 5% or a 4%. I think that the budgeting that was done in terms of last year, this year's budget and the carry forward is such that I don't think that whatever percentages the governing board determines are appropriate, I don't think that puts us in a financially difficult situation, not only this year, but in the next several years to come.
Thank you. That was going to be my next question. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, do I have a, pardon?
Probably need a motion. You're just
Yeah,
saying
I was
that.
going to say I'll entertain motions.
Starting with item B, I'm assuming.
Yes, item B.
I'll make the motion. So we're doing B, which is the high school,
All of the instructional staff.
all the instructional staff. Well, not for adult ed.
That's what you can parse it out and do a separate
Oh,
motion.
if we
but
did the whole thing, the instructional staff. So
Correct.
that would be B and C, or?
No, so B, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Timmy, but B is salary increase for all instructional staff, high school instructional staff and adult instructional staff. C is salary increases for high school and adult education support staff.
Or
And then-
hourly, okay,
And then D would be for administration.
all right.
Correct.
So, I'll move that we approve an increase for our instructional staff. I'm going to recommend or move that we increase by 6% for this upcoming fiscal year.
Do I have
I'll
a
second
second?
that.
Having
Covington,
having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Boggs, will you call for the vote?
Yes. Covington,
aye.
Johnson,
No.
Lane,
Aye.
Doolin,
No,
Boggs is a no, Watkins,
Aye.
Hart,
Aye.
Hobson,
Aye.
Fleetum.
No.
Yes.
No.
Okay. That's 5-4, motion carries. Correct? Am I right?
correct.
That's what I had.
Yep.
That brings us to 4C, salary increases for high school and adult education support staff. Dr. Wilson,
It's the same conversation I had with the others. I mean, I'd be happy to answer
okay.
additional questions.
Do I have a motion then?
I have a question for Dr. Wilson. Excuse me, I have a question for Dr. Wilson. Are
Who's
we
talking?
struggling to get adult education instructional staff to stick with EVIT, or are they coming and sticking with us, no matter what whether it's nursing, cosmetology, surgical techs, construction, whatever, are we getting the people that we need?
I would make sure that when I say this, Mr. President, I think adult education is one of the more difficult positions to hire and to keep, adult education.
My experience has been that's at least in the construction sciences, it's always been difficult to get people to come
It's incredibly difficult.
and take these positions. So thank you for clarifying that.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I do. Dr. Wilson, do any of these have a part-time job outside of team? You know, they just come in the evening?
So we're talking about the support staff, correct?
Or support staff, yeah.
I don't know with our support staff if they have a part-time job. I know that in our instructional side, our adult.
You're okay. I'm wrong.
I will tell you that there is staff, and I only know because some of the names I recognize and I work with outside of EVIT, there are some support staff and instructional staff that also have other jobs.
Right. I know our instructional staff do. I just wasn't sure of our support staff.
So may I make a comment on the secondary jobs? We're obviously not bringing people in here based on what they earn someplace else. It's whether or not we can be competitive. And the fact that somebody has an outside job shouldn't make a difference if they're fulfilling their EVIT requirements that their job has, should have no bearing on what they earn someplace else.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. I agree too.
I agree 100%.
Agreed.
Are there any other questions? Hearing none, Ms. Boggs, will you call for
Well,
the
I
vote?
don't believe that there's a motion.
Yeah, I
There's
don't
no
think
motion.
there's no motion.
Oh, do I have a motion then?
I would move the 6% for the instructional staff.
Wait.
For the support staff.
Support
me.
staff.
Wait a second. Are we voting on support staff or instructional
Having a
staff?
motion.
So you've
Support
already
staff.
voted on. Yeah.
Support staff, forgive me. I misspoke. Support staff, 6%.
Can we clarify the motion?
I move the 6% for the support staff.
I'll be on item C,
And that
and I'll
was the-
second that.
Okay. Now, is there any discussion? Any further discussion?
I'm lost.
We're about to vote on C, 4C. The support staff at a 6% raise. Who said they were lost? I didn't see who that was.
I was, because we were
Okay.
just talking about instructional staff and now we're talking about support staff, so.
That was my, Mr. Fleta, that was my error. I misspoke initially and I corrected it. So we're talking
Okay.
about the support staff.
Okay,
Support staff, correct.
so that would be, we are voting on the salary increases for high school and adult education support staff, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, are we all okay? Ms. Boggs, will you call for the vote?
Covington,
Aye.
Lane,
Aye.
Doolin,
No,
Boggs is an aye. Watkins,
Aye.
Hart,
Aye.
Hobson,
Aye.
Leatham.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Johnson, you didn't
I
call
didn't
Johnson.
Oh,
vote.
Johnson, I'm sorry. Sorry, Lair.
It makes no difference, but no,
Johnson,
no.
okay, no.
Motion still carried though, I thought.
Yes, it does.
Then moving on to 4D, salary increases for administration. We essentially heard the discussion. I guess I can't discuss until we have a motion. Do I have a motion on 4D for administration?
I'll make a motion for a 5% on administration, but I'd also like a caveat that we revisit our administration onboarding and original salary schedule, because I think the whole thing is low.
Wait, you confused me. Can you repeat?
I think that the salary schedule itself for administration needs to be looked at because it's not comparable to the administration in other facilities, in other areas.
It's not, clearly it's not.
Right. So I don't think just voting a percentage is going to even that playing field. I think that's, I mean, I'll just be honest. The reason I'm voting no is because I don't think we're solving the problem.
We haven't voted yet.
I'm clarifying so everybody understands where I'm at. Like, I think we have a bigger problem than just approving a 5 or 6% raise. We are obviously unbalanced on our salary schedule. So we're trying to put lipstick on a pig and not fixing what's broken.
I agree, but your motion was for a 5% for
Yep.
administration.
Yes,
Okay.
but I'd
Do
also,
I-
but I added that we review this when we have more data to revisit the administrative salaries.
I got you.
That was part of my motion.
Do we have a second?
No second.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask a point of order. I'd like to ask our legal counsel if we can do that in terms of the notice to the public, the agenda item. Can we do that additional item of business? To qualify the motion that way.
We're not really taking any legal action with respect to the idea that we're going to revisit the salary schedule. So we're not really doing that now. That's going to be there'll be a future vote on that if they actually change the salary schedule. So I think it's okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So can I ask a clarifying question? So the idea is to revisit the administrative salary schedule and can do a comparison to other organizations in relationship to roles, responsibilities, and within that, different compensation potentially for different, as an example, a director, it may not be a director, may not be a director, and parse it out
Correct.
that way. Is that okay? And
Yes,
what-
correct. So I can clarify my motion just to make it cleaner and I can bring this back. I can do it when we're calling for new business and we can direct the board. Correct me if I'm wrong, but can't we direct the superintendent to bring that back at a later time to look at the salary schedule?
I believe we can.
Calendar.
Yes, you could,
Okay,
you can
so-
do that.
Mr. President, you'd have to add, and it's your discretion, that we do not have a calendar event where we can add those things. You may add that if you wish to towards the meeting.
Wait, I'm not sure I followed that.
We don't, Go ahead.
It's okay, Bob. I'll send an email requesting it,
Yeah.
and it's the same difference outside the meeting. I'm just letting everybody know why I'm motioning what I'm motioning, but I'll keep it simple for everybody and say, I make a motion for a 5%. I'm amending my motion for a 5% for administration.
Much simpler.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, can I ask Ms. Dillon a question?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there, so in choosing 5% rather than 6%, are you sending a message with that at all? Or not? Is it your intention to send a message by choosing a percent lower?
I don't know that 6, I'm uncomfortable going higher than 5 without knowing, really, I'm uncomfortable. I really don't even want to go that high. I think it's wrong. Our salary schedule's wrong, but I don't think it's fair to leave them in limbo with nothing at this point. But a director is not a director, is not a director. And one size does not fit all on an administrative salary schedule.
But that can be done at a later date then.
Correct.
Has to be.
So, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Doolan, but I thought your point was that the administrative salaries you thought were in fact too low.
Okay,
Did I
so let
understand
me
that?
clarify. I think our salary schedule across the board is wrong because you have hard to fill positions that so I'm going to use Mr. Fleetham's example. Construction, there's certain hard to fill positions. So our salary schedule for a construction worker might be completely different than trying to hire the industry standard for something I don't know anything about constructions, but I say in nursing. Like they might be completely different. So we need to look at our salary schedule and look at what those hard to fill professions are. And we need to balance that. You can balance it with a hard to fill. So you have a salary schedule, but you have certain positions that are hard to fill and get additional stipends because they're hard to fill.
So
One size fits all for when we're teaching everything from cosmetology, culinary, construction, auto mechanic, data processing, welding, you name it, it does not work because the industry is not equal in those areas.
Yeah, I understand that, and Mr. Chairman, Ms. Doolan, and I do know a little bit about the bad old days when things were just kind of done willy-nilly, and that you all, I should say, as a board and Dr. Wilson, the administration have done a great job in trying to address some of those problems that existed before. But I thought the item of business we were on were the increases for administrators. We're on item that's the item we're dealing with right now. And I concur in your suggestion about a proper salary study with appropriate availability of flexibility for choosing a higher amount for hard to fill positions. And there are ways to do that. But in terms of I thought the item of business was for administrators, and I think doing it at 5% rather than 6% like everybody else, it seems to me just wrong. So I concur.
Well, you can vote no.
Yeah, no, I
Just
concur.
like I did.
I concur in your proposal, but I'm going to offer a substitute motion to do the administrators at 6% rather than 5%.
Do I get this then? Are you're trying to amend the motion from 5 to 6?
I'm
He's offering a
substitute.
separate motion. He
No, a
can't amend my motion.
No, a
Then
substitute.
don't we have, I think we have to vote on the motion that's already out there and been seconded.
That's correct.
5%.
Go back again if we need to.
Wait, I can't hear what you're saying.
We need to conclude this matter, and then if it fails, then we can entertain another motion.
Correct.
Actually, I don't think that's correct. I think a substitute motion takes priority over the pending motion. You can vote down the substitute motion, but I think you have to take up the substitute motion.
You need a second.
Correct.
I'll second. Covington.
I'm not sure which motion we're going to vote on. I thought we're voting on
Well, if 5% passes, if the 5% passes, then we do that. If it fails, then we have the other motion to go to 6%.
Yes, I got you.
I think that's actually an error. I think that you take the substitute motion up first. I think that's how Robert's rule
Well, the
works.
motion to modify.
No, it's actually a substitute motion.
I
So let me
think we
check
ask
my
legal
comprehend-
counsel to clarify so that we don't keep debating.
Yes.
I
Good
would,
idea.
I would love to do that, Ms. Doolin, but my Robert's Rule of Order, I didn't get to that chapter on substitute motions. It's not come up before. I don't know the answer to that.
So I will give a stab at it. Don't know that I'm right. But my limited understanding is that the substantive motion was seconded. And as a result, you vote on that. If that fails, then it reverts back to the original motion.
Sure.
And the original motion then is what's voted on. That's my understanding. Could be wrong.
Well, my
That's
understanding
accurate.
is that you would vote, we have a motion and a second to modify the motion. So we would vote yes or no to modify the motion. If it fails, then we still have to vote to pass the issue, whether it be the 5% or the 6%. But we vote to approve or disapprove the motion. And then we would, if that fails, then we go back and vote the original motion.
I think that's what, so the modified motion is for 6% and you're indicating that's what gets voted on now?
Right. Well, the motion to modify, and then our motion, if it fails, then the motion to modify fails and it goes back to the original motion.
We're all in
That's
agreement.
what Robert's rules.
I'm
So,
not sure.
checking my comprehension, you're voting on the amended motion, but not the approval of the amended motion. You're voting on the motion to be amended based on Mr. Hobson's recommendation. If that is not passed, then if we stay on Ms. Doolin's motion, but if it does pass, then you're voting again.
Then we got to vote again
Yes,
for the new
okay.
motion.
Hey, but we have a problem. We did not do this last time. Last time when there was a second, I don't know what Mr. Hobson called it, when other people went over the top, we voted on that motion. So we
It's a
need to decide,
substitute
because
motion.
right now we're talking about doing something different than we did 3 days ago.
Well, this Kevin, 3 days ago, we were voting on motions to table motions, and the tabling motion takes precedent over the original motion. A motion to amend, you have to vote on, and then if you accept the amendment, then you vote on the amended motion. Mr. Hobson's offering a substitute motion, which is different than amending the motion, which is where I got lost.
Substitute motion's out of order. It would have to be amended.
No.
Mr. Hobson, would you consider
I'm-
rewording your motion as an amendment to
Yes.
Rhonda's motion? And then we can
I'd be
vote on
pleased,
that.
I'd be pleased to. I'm madly reading Robert's Rules of Order right now on my phone and my eyes are failing, so it's not doing me much good. I'll do whatever the wisdom of the body is. I don't want to create problems. I'm sorry. Whatever you suggest, counsel.
We would need to.
They need you to
introduce a
amend the
to
motion.
Amend the motion. And the
Yes.
second, we vote the amendment, and then if that is successful, then we vote the issue.
Yes, let's do that.
We're voting, to make sure I understand, we're voting then to amend the motion.
That's correct.
Correct.
That's all.
Ms. Boggs, you're in the dark.
Yeah,
So-
I'm outside and the sun's gone down and it's
Okay.
freezing. So
Okay, can we call for the
I do
vote?
have a jacket on though. So,
Okay.
okay, yes. Covington,
Yes, aye.
Johnson,
No.
Lane,
Aye.
Doolin,
No,
Boggs is no, Watkins,
Aye.
Hart,
No.
Hobson,
Aye.
and Freedom.
Aye.
5-4.
It's 5-4.
Motion carried, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Now we're back to voting or amending.
You know, now the original motion's now amended to 6%. Now you have to vote on whether you're gonna give it 6%.
But I need a motion on that.
No,
No, the
you
motion's
have,
already there.
you have Rhonda's original motion as amended by that vote. So now it's just, there's a motion right now on the table that's been seconded for 6% raise for administrators, and that's what you're gonna vote on.
Now, then let's call for the vote. Ms. Boggs?
Covington,
Aye.
Johnson,
Oh.
Lane,
Aye.
Doolin,
No,
Boggs is no. Watkins,
Aye.
Hart,
Aye.
Hobson,
Aye.
Freedom.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carried then at 6%
Correct.
for
Yes.
admission. Okay. That brings us to
Adios.
closing items.
Thank you. Whew. Cold. It's cold out
I so
here.
move. We adjourn.
Do I have a motion?
I so
Second.
move. We move. Got it.
Second.
Can that be done by a voice call?
Yes, it may.
Yeah, well, then I call for a voice call. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. We're adjourned.